New this morning, a man is dead after leading police on a chase before jumping over the Lafayette Bridge in St. Paul. Police tell us the chase started on Concord Street just after 10:40 last night in South St. Paul. The driver then drove northbound on Highway 52 in St. Paul. Police say he stopped the vehicle on the bridge, got out, and then jumped about 50 feet down to a grassy area between the Mississippi River and Shepherd Road. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The BCA is now investigating.
A teenager is still fighting for his life after being shot in a Metro Transit bus in Minneapolis earlier this week. Police say the boy was shot in the stomach on a crowded bus shortly before 9 Wednesday night. He was taken to North Memorial Medical Center in Robbinsdale, where he is still listed in critical condition. Transit police say the two involved know each other, and cameras on board will help identify the gunman. Now, police say another juvenile called 911 a few minutes after the transit shooting to say he had been shot in the hand. He was also taken to North Memorial. Investigators are working to find out if the two shootings are related.
A passage by the Senate is being called a major step forward for President Donald Trump's promises for massive tax cuts and reform. Last night, the Senate passed a $4 trillion budget blueprint. The 51-49 vote sets the stage for debate later this year to dramatically overhaul the U.S. tax code. It would cut rates for individuals and corporations while clearing away trillions of dollars worth of deductions and special interest tax breaks. The tax cuts would add up to $1.5 trillion to the federal deficit over the coming decade. New legislation could shore up the Affordable Care Act and keep premiums from spiking next year. 12 Republicans and 12 Democrats have signed the bill to stabilize Obamacare. It would reinstate subsidies for insurance companies to bring down the cost for low-income Americans. President Trump has gone back and forth on whether he will support the legislation, but he also says the subsidies are a bailout for insurance companies. A bipartisan group of governors signed a letter to Congress urging them to support the plan. Top Minnesota lawmakers are asking Congress to repeal a controversial new law they say is actually making the opioid problem worse.
That's after a shocking 60 Minutes investigation last Sunday that appears to weaken U.S. drug laws, allowing drug companies to dispense millions of opioids in small communities. Pat Kessler explains that report has lawmakers from both parties demanding action.
60 Minutes discovered major flaws in a new drug law passed by both parties and signed by President Obama last year. And some Minnesota lawmakers fighting opioids are furious.
And we're all outraged.
State Senator Chris Eaton lost her daughter Ariel to an overdose 10 years ago and is the author of numerous bills to curb the opioid epidemic.
We're all going, here we're fighting so hard here, and our federal government is just giving them carte blanche to ship this stuff all over the place.
60 Minutes reported the pharmaceutical industry wrote legislation making it harder for the DEA to curb the flow of drugs.
One example, a pharmacy in Kermit, West Virginia, a town of just 392 people, ordered 9 million hydrocodone pills over 2 years.
That's why state lawmakers are calling for the law to be repealed, including Representative Dave Baker, who lost his son Dan to a drug overdose and says everyone owns this one.
It makes you wonder, the system that we have on a federal level is so upside down, and who is really driving the bus out there?
The state health department reports one Minnesotan dies almost every day from opioid overdoses, and Senator Eaton says she's frustrated but undeterred.
I guess I feel a lot of despair sometimes. Like, is this going to stop before we've lost a whole generation?
Minnesota Democratic Congressman Colin Peterson's office told state lawmakers he will introduce a bill to repeal the controversial drug law.
Tonight, the Minnesota Timberwolves look to pick up their first win of the season, making their Target Center debut. It will also be the fans' first chance to see the new look of the arena after a $140 million renovation. They will also notice a wider concourse, revamped bathrooms, new seats, and a whole lot more. As for the team, Minnesota is coming off a loss to the Spurs Wednesday night in San Antonio in their first game of the season. Tonight, former point guard Ricky Rubio is back as well, playing for the Utah Jazz. Tip-off is at 7.
And after nearly a week off, the Minnesota Wild are also back in action tonight. It's been a tough start to the season with several key players injured. The Wild have just one win in 4 games, but have picked up points in 3 thanks to overtime. Tonight they'll try to right the ship against the Winnipeg Jets. Puck drop is at 7. So lots of sports this weekend.
Oh, yeah, something to cheer for everybody, I think. Back in